Roll camera. Action.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Takes. Today we have Liz Chege on our podcast to talk about her involvement with Africa in Motion as an art director and her career working as a creative in festival programming. For those of you who don't know Liz, Liz is a film programmer, critic, and film marketing specialist. She is a Berlinale Talent alumni and founding member of Come the Revolution, a collective of creatives and curators committed to exploring Black life, experience, and cultural expression through cinema. She was the program producer of British Council's No Direct Flight at British Film Institute South Bank in London, which is about a cross-media exploration of global African diaspora moving image makers that explored how the digital world has shaped culture and aesthetics and has curated programs for international festivals such as Cinema Rediscovered. Most recently, Liz has been appointed as Festival Director of Africa in Motion Film Festival. So we are really excited to have Liz on today as part of our season 2, which is focused about exhibitions and film festivals. And yeah, welcome, Liz. So one of the first questions that we kind of wanted to ask, because a lot of our listeners don't know much about film festivals, is what is a festival director do? Why is it important to the festival?
Oh, that is such a loaded question, but there's so many things that encompass the work, the role. I mean, most importantly is the funding applications for financial security. We are a registered charity, so we're publicly funded for the most part. We develop budgets, we set up workflows and operations, and work on the growth strategy for the programs. Those are under our responsibility directly. And then on the artistic side is kind of managing the curation and the growth of the film and the events programs, both in terms of impact and fundraising. And then just if you look in a bird's eye view, the forward planning and the strategic objectives of the organization. So at the moment, although I've only been in this role about 6 or 7 months, I'm thinking in 1, 3, 5, and 10-year cycles, because you want to be able to set things in place that put things in motion for where you'd like to end up. And at the end of the day, Africa in Motion is part of a community, and it tangibly affects lives, people's lives, and the spirit of the local economy. So you can't forget your responsibility to that. And then partnerships, collaborations, and sponsorships. You have to find the right brands that merge with your values and your ethical stance as an organization. You develop and coordinate a network of cultural organizations and the creative pioneers at local, national, and international levels. And also, of course, balancing all of that, because you want to make sure you're showing African cinema, but also recognizing the Black diaspora talent in the UK. So your program has to be responsible in that respect. And then in terms of human resources, placements and developing talent and volunteers, I have to be an active participant in recruitment. And also, finally, interviews like this one and the public representation of the festival. So our presence influences public relations and marketing and so on. I hope that answers your question.
So you basically do it all as a festival director.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that I got tired just listening to all the work you do.
There's a lot going on in my head at the moment.
So what made you interested in working with Africa in Motion as a director, and like what about the journey led to your position there? Like how'd you end up?
Yeah, so it's quite a winding journey, mine. I'll try and summarize it, but essentially I was literally in the middle of relocating to Kenya last year. I just got really tired of the anti-immigrant and racist rhetoric going on in the country, and the constant scapegoating. It does affect you mentally. And after all the years I'd lived here, I felt like I'd gotten everything I needed to get. So my higher education and work experience, and I was just ready to go back and be with my family in Kenya. That's where all my family is. And then I got this job offer in the middle of all of that.
It's always when you're about to give up.
Yeah. You know what they say about when you make a firm decision, suddenly a lot of other things happen. And that's what happened for me. After so long of trying to break the glass ceiling, I had enough. I'd put in the time, I'd put in the hours, and sacrificed a lot of other things for changing this career. So my previous career was in architecture. I did a double major in architecture and town planning. And I was still very early on in my career when I realized it's not what I wanted to do. It was very different to school. For example, you end up doing a lot of menial tasks for at least 15, 20 years before you can really get to do what you wanted to do as an architect. And I was really enjoying writing about cinema at the time, especially African film. And this was when social media had just begun. So Twitter was starting to be taken more seriously. And I was promoting what I was writing. And then I know I've gone off on a tangent, but I needed to give you a history of where I ended up.
No, your story is so crazy. Like to go from
an
architect.
Right? I know. Sorry, Bianca.
I love it. It's so interesting. And especially because Ashley and I are in a similar boat where we kind of not given up, but the opportunities are not here for us. And so we had to make the decision to go home, and I'm happy it worked out for you. And there that's a little silver lining for us, that there's some, it's what's meant for us will come, and in due timing. So I'm glad it worked out for you. And working with Africa in Motion was your calling for this period of your life. And
thank you for the kind words. That's very kind. It's tough. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't tough. They're often, if you're a freelancer, you're often not sure where your rent is going to come from. And the reality is, the film industry in Kenya is still in its infancy, which is why I stayed. I needed to get the work experience because I knew there's no way I'd afford to go to film school. So I found my way by writing about film. And that's how I got discovered, actually. Online, the cinema curator of Watershed Cinema in Bristol, which is quite a well-known organization, found me online, and we started having a conversation. And then I Googled him and I found a picture. His name is Mark Cosgrove. And I randomly bumped into him at Watershed one time when I was seeing a film, and introduced myself. And since then, he kind of took me under his wing because he could see how dedicated I was, and I was doing it all for free, And through that, and through funded organizations like Film Hub, which is quite well known, they have like regional hubs. So the Film Hub Southwest is the one that kind of took me under their wing through Mark Cosgrove, and started to invite me to workshops and pay me for small opportunities. And something that forever I will be grateful for and have to find a way to pay it forward is how Watershed Cinema allowed me to see films for free. Every week that I was allowed to see several films for free, just like a regular staff member. And through that, I just learned so much about cinema. There's nothing like seeing films on the big screen rather, and attending Q&As and events and understanding how powerful this medium is. And then through that, they connected me to other people similar to me, and we formed Come the Revolution, which is a collective that you mentioned earlier. There were 5 of us founding members. I've since left because I had to relocate, but it's still going. And through that, we were able to deliver amazing projects, which I know you'll ask me about them later. And then an opportunity opened up to do an MA in curating in Bristol. And my the organization I was based at for the MA was Watershed Cinema. So then I got to know how to run a venue. Of course, not everything, because it's been around for such a long time. There's no way you can learn everything. But for my year, I was based there. And the outcome of the MA, for a large part, was the project that we deliver at the end of the MA. And mine was focused on cartoonists and satire. And I did a special focus on Ralph Steadman, who's well known for his work with Hunter S. Thompson. And Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas film. He did the illustrations for the book. So the focus was on him. And that went really well. And it got mentioned in The Guardian and stuff. And all of this couldn't have happened without Watershed and Mark Cosgrove and Maddie Probst in particular, who have been and continue to be my mentors all this time. Opening a door is so important. And that's kind of why I took this job as well, is to think about, well, how else can I pay this forward to other people who are in a similar situation to me? And yeah, that was my main impetus for taking the job. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and also you mentioned all these people, but also you're writing your own work and like promoting it online for Twitter. So it's great that you are also like, you believed in yourself, and it's nice that people recognized it and saw your talent. So.
It's interesting you say that, because it was less about me believing in myself and me being frustrated that so much great work was not being. And I said, well, I can't keep complaining. I've got to do something. And I didn't even care who was reading it. I just needed it to be available on the internet, that someone has documented that these African films are important, and maybe someone will discover it and watch it on a DVD and then tell someone else. And that's all I was thinking about. I didn't think far ahead at all. I just wanted to be able to document it and say, this was important, and mark it in history of time somewhere. I actually didn't believe in myself. It's hilarious. No, yeah, I was just angry. There's so much great work being made, and no one's talking about it. So that was it. And I think there's a deep wisdom in anger. And actually, I like how you asked the question, because sometimes what you do ends up being a reflection of yourself. So because I was angry about this lack of conversation and representation, by platforming other people who I did believe in, maybe in retrospect was a mirror of myself, and saying, actually, I have something important to say.
Yes.
So maybe there's something in that. I don't know. But I do think anger, if it's used well, can be extremely effective.
Oh, yeah. So kind of talking along the lines of that, what do you find is the hardest thing about programming African film for a UK audience?
I think, well, you could think about it in two phases, I guess. The first phase is finding the work. Because they're not talked about, African filmmakers are not talked about in the same reverence as filmmakers from elsewhere, such as Asia or India. Finding the work is a little bit harder. And one of the things I love so much about African Motion is that Dr. Lizelle Bischoff, who founded the festival, set up an African film database that people could access for free and research and find work. And that's something it's really important to me to carry on. Also, just the general nature of the film industry, which is kind of the negotiations, the lack of restorations. There's a lot of African cinema that's been lost because nobody took care of it. So restorations are hard to come by. And one of the projects I love so much is Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Foundation. He has a special focus on African cinema, and has been restoring work for years now, especially Sembène and Jibril Mambeti. So some of the most well-known African filmmakers, the restorations are largely because of Martin Scorsese's work. And also just availability, like on DVDs or screeners. And then the second phase, I suppose, Bianca, your question about the UK audience, because generally there's only one perspective really that's represented on the news and advertisements like those. I know they're necessary to a degree, but there's charity adverts that are constant on the television. Or they do a disservice to a degree, because if all you're being fed subconsciously is that this is a continent that's only ever in need, it never gives back, it never produces anything, it doesn't produce anything positive, then subconsciously audiences will think, oh, I don't want to just see misery on screen, I don't want to just see sad stories all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that subconscious thing that's going on, and we find that it's hard sometimes to get audiences to come to see the work, because they'll assume that it's just going to be war and poverty and violence.
Yeah. It gets associated with like a negative kind of energy that you're not kind of willing to go.
Yeah. No, but that's interesting that you say, because not only do you have to fight for representation, but you have to fight like the representation that's already been made and combat like stereotypes and stigmas that, go against what you're trying to. I mean, like Ashley was saying, a lot of the films that I had seen, they were so like lively. There was music and dancing and full of life. And it's like, why wouldn't you go see this? And it's because it's been advertised a certain way.
Yeah.
But kind of what you were talking about, Liz, is that there's been this stigma, I guess, about it.
And it's also countering the very, very purposeful efforts to repress Black history and what Black people have contributed to the world. So, at the moment, I'm aware that there's a very conscious effort in the States to remind people in America about the Black inventors who've existed in history. Like the person who invented the traffic light was Black, the person who invented the super soaker was a NASA engineer. Like there's so many, and there's been a conscious effort to hide this history, and not just in curriculums and in the syllabus, but in general media and entertainment and culture. And the same has happened here as well. So it doesn't surprise me, and I understand why we're in the situation we're in, but I have to focus my energy on what I can do about that problem. And of course, the onus should not be just on Black people and people of color. It should be a collaboration across the board. But I also know that I can't wait. I can't wait for people to realize this. I've got to do something about it wherever I am. And also make sure that impact is long term, which is the hard part.
Kind of going off of that, then kind of what are some of the future hopes of Africa in Motion that you see as the festival director there? I know you said like keeping the database, and do you want to start maybe archiving work and doing restorations for work as well? What are your hopes?
I think, so one of the things I'm most proud of the most recent edition, even though it was absolute chaos to move everything online, people think all you do is just put a video online and you press play, but there's so many levels to it. There's geo-blocking, there's, how do people buy the tickets? Like there's so much you have to think about, and also accessibility. But one of the things I'm most proud of is the Notes Unbound platform that I set up, which looks at elevating voices, especially in film criticism of the Black diaspora as well as African writers. And in the wake of the horrors that were yielded from like reckoning with racial injustice recently, I wanted to bring focus to the lack of Black voices in the arts and creative industries in written form, in particular film criticism. So I opted not to cancel the 2020 edition, despite it being my first year with the festival, because the trauma all of us are experiencing due to this pandemic and the ongoing kind of racial injustice conversation, we needed an outlet and a space for people to convene and enjoy the work of Black artists and different perspectives. So in line with that, I needed to have somewhere where people could write and engage with the work. So I selected 4 film critics. One of them I know, Sharon, is part of your team. And I commissioned them to write 3 pieces each on the festival, and they loved it, and it was really great. It could have gone smoother, but because of the time frame, I'm still really proud of how everything's gone on, and I'm going to keep going with that. It was inspired by my experience at Berlinale. So I was selected as one of the film critics in their talents program, and they only select 8 a year. So I couldn't believe that my little blog.
That's impressive. Congratulations.
So this was in 2016. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that what I was writing was seen by big people at Berlinale, who were willing to invite me to be part of their very select few of film critics. And it was one of the best, if not the best, experience in this industry in my life. Because from that, I mean, just the vibe was so great, but also the caliber of the talent that you're with. You know, I've made so many friends and connections through that experience, and I wanted to pay that forward somehow. And although we're starting small, I'm still quite proud that we were able to start something. Just through that, I was able to meet people like Ray Marcus Green, who recently made Monsters and Men, starring John David Washington and Nikki Behari. And he's now making a film with Will Smith. And it's just like, how, you know, we were all quite young and just starting out. And everybody I knew through that has gone on to do incredible things. And you just can't take it for granted, those kinds of opportunities. So I wanted to do that for someone else. And then otherwise, looking forward, something else that I'm really proud of was our collaboration with the other 4 African festivals in the UK. The consortium is called TANA, which in Swahili means 5. And we made a collaboration online last year to celebrate the fact that most of us have been now operating for at least 10 years. So we wanted to look at the last 10 years of contemporary cinema in the African continent. And we ended up being mentioned in The Guardian with this film program. And Peter Bradshaw, who's a critic at The Guardian, was so inspired by our season that he created his own list to complement our season.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's big.
It's really big. And, you know, he included archive cinema, which is what we weren't including in our program. So that was really nice as a compliment to us. And our program happened to coincide with the imprisonment of my friend, Hajjaj Kuka, who's a Sudanese director, who I also met at Berlinale Talent. He directed the films Beats of the Antonov and Akasha, and Beats was one of the films in our program. So when he got arrested, I organized a joint statement for the 5 African festivals to join like a global outcry against this. And he was released shortly after. And then this led to me being interviewed by The Economist about the film season. So it's just, it's been quite a whirlwind the last 6 or 7 months. And looking forward, I want to build on these platforms and see where we can go with this, because there's a lot of power in collaboration and opening doors for other people.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, with the writing reviews, I have gotten really recently into reading reviews, especially by my friends. So because Sharon wrote it, so then I was even more intrigued to go look at more. And then we also, our other host Newton, he does a lot of film reviews as well, and it's so nice to hear people actually talking and engaging with film. And yeah, I'm excited to see like what Africa in Motion will be doing in the future with you as the festival director. Seems like you have some really good plans, and they're already working despite the pandemic.
Absolutely. And definitely, this isn't just me. You know, I have an incredible team, and our website guy, oh my goodness, he's an actual superhero, because he built us a bespoke platform in such a short amount of time. And because his nature is problem solving, he's like a problem solver, and he's been just such a joy to work with. And I would say that for the rest of the team too. You know, it's a collaborative effort. Yes, it's true that there has to be some kind sense of a vision, but last year we didn't have that luxury. We just needed to get something done. So this year I'm trying really hard to think practically about what we can do with this ongoing pandemic, and how and my responsibility to supporting independent cinema venues, because the reality is that's how I got into this industry as well. So I can't ignore the cinemas and just only focus on online screenings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so how were your experiences dealing with the first ever online run of Africa in Motion, and what was the overall general response? And do you see yourself adding an online component to each festival run moving forward?
Yes, absolutely. So overwhelmingly, our audience survey, it showed that people loved having an online offering. And because we were able to reach the rest of the UK, that was major for us because people can't travel all the way to Scotland to attend. So something that really touched me is that people felt like they traveled the world from their sofa. And there's so many people with mobility issues who were so grateful to us that we had an online offering and it was affordable. So we kept our sliding scale ticketing to make sure that it was affordable for as many people as possible. And looking forward, it's about finding a hybrid, I suppose, of how do we still support cinema venues, because there's nothing like seeing a film in the cinema, and provide this online platform for people. In terms of accessibility, yes, it was way more expensive than we expected. So for this year, we've learned a lesson about budgeting for that. But we wanted to make sure as many films as possible could be captioned. Many of them had subtitles anyway, but having captions, audio described as well, was really important to us. And then providing sign language interpreters and so on. So we're trying to think hard about that, and also how the usability of our website, and how people with sight impairments can access the website as well. So we're trying to think of this on multiple levels. If, for example, providing the program PDF in large text as well. So it's just like there's so many levels to this, and I'm learning as I go. And to answer your earlier part, Bianca, on a personal level, it's been extremely draining. I'm not gonna lie. I did have COVID symptoms earlier in the year, and I'm still experiencing some of the brain fog that came with that. So on a physical level, I'm still decompressing from it. There is a lot of pressure on leaders of organizations at the moment to know the unknowable, and I'm finding that compassion for that is waning. And that concerns me a bit because we're in this the same as everybody else. So when we're making a decision, we're thinking about, plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, we're thinking about everything that could possibly go wrong. So it's when you make a decision, it's not just a decision. You're making like one decision that has like at least 6 different scenarios. And that happens on a daily basis with multiple decisions. So it's quite draining. But I'm fortunate that I have people in my network that I can speak to about this who are experiencing the same and trying to come up with solutions together. I think the answer is in collaborating and doing as many events together as possible, because the more hands-on, the better. The more hands are available, the better. I think the way the film industry is structured has not helped. I hope this has been a humbling experience, and I've seen this for people within the industry, distributors, funding organizations. They have to think differently now, and also how they treat freelancers, because many of them are not eligible for the furlough schemes, and some of the government assistance is not available to freelancers. So there's so many gaps that people are having to rethink, and how to be compassionate to one another, because you need each other.
Yeah.
The film industry is built on freelancers, everything from crew to exhibition.
Yeah, that's also another great reason. I think a lot of the festivals in Glasgow, but because Africa in Motion, I think, was the first festival I went to when I was in Glasgow, how much they take into consideration accessibility and how inclusive that they want to be in their festivals is really inspiring, because I don't know, I don't think a lot of festivals, like big name festivals, are doing that. So which is a shame.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people miss the boat when they think about accessibility. It's not just about things like BSL and so on. I keep coming to this. because it's so important. It's so crucial to open the doors for people. When we talk about accessibility, it's also resources. And one of the things I kept seeing in the industry is, again, this thing about the critics. So if you think back to Nate Parker's Birth of a Nation, I don't know if any of you saw that.
Birth of a
I was
Nation.
It's a play on the original racist Birth of a Nation.
Okay.
But so Nate Parker made this film about Nat Turner, who led the rebellion, the big rebellion in America of enslaved people against the slave owners. And it was quite a brutal rebellion. It was very violent. But anyway, Nate Parker made this film, and it did really well at Sundance. And it sold for a lot of money. I can't remember the studio that bought it. And then the film came out. And all these Black film critics and scholars were like, what is this nonsense? Like, we don't like this film. There's so many problems with this. And the reason is, when the film was being screened at the festivals, Black critics were not invited. In general, I can't speak to everything. But
Yeah.
that was the general consensus, that, you know, if you had Black people watching this film before, they would have told you that the problems with this film are numerous. I saw the film and disliked it for multiple reasons. But he was also affected by allegations against him. He was acquitted, but there were numerous allegations, and there was a lot of like sketchy details about the case. So he was affected by that too. He was actually one of the first to be affected by the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. It's like, if those resources were available to everybody on an equal par, then we would have a much more interesting industry with multiple viewpoints, and you'd understand so many things. So that was why the film criticism aspect, one of the reasons why it was so important to me that we develop these writers. Yeah, the film ended up flopping, you know, and it's just a shame, because now what'll happen is people are like, oh, Black directors don't make any money, they don't make any returns, and blah, 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 you know. It affects everybody.
Yeah. But really, he was set up for failure for, you know, they nominated him without giving him a real jury to decide.
Yeah. So there's so many things about this industry that need change and restructuring and just abolishing and rebuilding again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to see, well, what can I do to help that journey?
Yeah, you and your angry blog, you're like, somebody has to do it. Somebody needs to know this is how you run a festival.
Hey, I'm not pretending to know everything. I'm not pretending to do everything.
Well,
but
you're doing a much better job than those who do pretend that they know what they're doing. So
that's very kind of you to say. Thank you. But another key aspect in terms of the future is talent development. So I am looking at, you know, like festivals I admire, like Sundance, have really good development programs, and that's how I ended up being even more involved, because the Berlinale Talents Critics Press that I attended made the decision firmer for me that I needed to change careers. That was really like the final nail to tell me that, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right path. And if I can do that for someone else, that would make me so happy.
Yeah, paying it forward is super rewarding. So you've been a part of Africa in Motion. You've attended a ton of festivals. Do you have any works that have inspired you? Any recommendations for our listeners?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So where do I start? I'll try and summarize this. I'll try and summarize
top
this.
10, top 5.
So I really love fine art. I really love photography. I love looking at other people's artwork. And whenever I'm in London, I visit specific galleries every single time. Of course, I add to them and I try to go to various ones, but I have like 3 key galleries that I go to. One is called Autograph ABP. It's in Shoreditch in London. Another one is called Hales, also in Shoreditch. in London,
Mm-hmm.
and the Photographers Gallery, which is also in London. I think it's near Oxford Street, if I remember correctly. But I like these three because somehow they just get me as an audience viewer. Like, I just love everything they show. And for example, Autograph is very much focused on people of color, artists. And it's free. That's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
You want to try and get as much good stuff as you can for free if you can't afford to attend some of these more expensive museums and galleries. And they were crucial for me. I've learned so much from them. Hale's gallery exposed me to the work of Frank Bowling, who's one of the most successful and well-known Black British artists, but I'd never heard of him until I saw his incredible paintings there. And Photographers Gallery, just because they're just so good at what they do anyway. And if you go, this is for your listeners, if you go before midday, any day of the week, it's free at the Photographers Gallery. So please go there. And I get a lot of ideas from reading the newspapers, listening to what's going on in the world, listening to podcasts. At the moment, I really loved Louis Theroux's most recent interview with Michaela Coe. I think his show is called Grounded. Anyway, it's his most recent podcast. I really like that. And I attend other festivals as often as I can. So, and it doesn't have to be festivals that have to do with the work I do. I'm interested in cinema as a whole, not just African cinema. And so, festivals like IFFR in Rotterdam, CPH Docs, Sundance. I try to attend as many different events as well as possible because you just learn so much from what everyone else is doing and how they're solving problems. In terms of music, I listen to jazz a lot. And I mean, I listen to everything, but jazz especially. And there's a song I listen to every day, actually, by Miles Davis. It's called Blue and Green. I feel like my day is not complete unless I hear that song. So I get inspiration and ideas from lots of different places, and I would encourage everyone to do the same, especially if it's something that that's not in your field. So another podcast I love is this guy. He's a professor of neuroscience and eye transmission. His name is Huberman, and he's done amazing work on sleep and cognition. And I've always had a problem with sleep, so I'm learning a lot through him.
Ooh, I'll have to check him out because same.
I'll share the links with you guys.
Ooh, please do.
Bianca needs that. She doesn't know what sleep is.
The biggest lesson I got from him is our circadian rhythm. So it's really important at the beginning of the day to get early light. So you don't have to be up at sunrise, but it's important for the sun to be at kind of a low horizon early in the morning. And that has to be outside if possible, or leave your window open because the glass slows that down. And then doing the same again in the evening so that your eyes can see the low light. There's something about that apparently in our brains that activates. And even if you haven't been doing it, you can start now and it'll kind of like reboot you.
Yeah.
If you do it for a few days consecutively, it reboots your body.
That's good to know. I'll have to try that.
It worked for me.
So what is like one of your favorite projects you have curated over the course of your career?
This is again a hard one because you learn so much from different projects. The one I did for my MA has a special place in my heart because I was already a fan of Ralph Steadman's artwork, and him as a cartoonist, his life has also been endangered in the past, like other cartoonists. So I had a lot of respect for that. But in terms of other work, I'm really proud of the seasons that we produced with Come the Revolution in Bristol. 2 of them stand out with the BFI. So the BFI the British Film Institute, for your listeners, they do like yearly themed seasons. Like I think last year it was Japan, so on. So in Come the Revolution, we responded to 2 of those seasons. One of them was the Black Star season, and this was it looked at like music biopics, and we had late night screenings and double bills, and we looked at stars that were under the radar and early performances from actors who would go on to become quite famous stars. One of the highlights from that was our takeover of a big music venue in Bristol formerly called Colston Hall. They changed the name because Edward Colston was a slave owner recently. I think you saw that they took his statue down in
Yeah.
Bristol. Yeah. So we took over that venue, that concert hall, because in the past famous musicians refused to perform there because of the name. Anyway, this was just after Prince had died, and we screened Purple Rain there.
Mm.
And they had never seen their venue that full before. So we had this well-known sound system DJ called Norman J. He's an MBE. He came and DJ'd the after party, and it was so full. And we took control of some of the rooms and put ping pong tables in them because Prince was a huge fan. And the whole venue was lit up in purple, and people came in fancy dress. That was like,
Oh, that
it
sounds
was
so fun.
yeah, it was one of the best. I'll send you like where you can see the pictures online. Then the other season we did with them was the comedy season, but we turned it on its head because many of the films were quite like straight comedy, but we saw that we needed to celebrate the many tones of comedy for our season, and we explored the power of satire, and we celebrated TV comedy legends, British TV comedy legends, and also like classic buddy movies as well. But in my career as a film marketing specialist, Bianca, as you can see, like there's like categories to to my favorite projects. There are multiple categories here.
Oh, I'm sure as someone who does so much like you, I'm sure there's millions of categories.
But the final one is like my freelance career as a marketing specialist. So the way I got into this was a friend of mine who's an actress got selected for a film that it was a studio film, but nobody thought it was going to be a big deal. So, and as well, she's a dark-skinned actress as well. So we just knew practically in Hollywood, you can only get so far, at least historically.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, she wasn't well known at all. So, and she didn't like social media. So because it was a studio film, she knew she had to have social media. And this was at the same time I had been writing on my blog, so I kind of knew how Twitter worked. And I offered my help to her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, sure. I need all the help I can get." And I became her social media manager, and she ended up winning an Oscar for this film.
Wow.
Yeah, and through that, with working with her PR team, because she kept me on in her team, I learned so much about film, the film industry, and how they use public relations and marketing. So because of that huge learning curve, I was her manager for 3 years. I kind of used that experience, because I didn't want to carry on in the PR world. I wanted to go back to curating for film and for film festivals and cinemas. I set up a consultancy on the side with a friend, and worked with other brands and other individuals on their online presence. And after I left the consultancy, I worked more and more as a freelance marketing specialist. So I worked with distributors like Netflix and Peccadillo Pictures, Modern Films, Artificial Eye, Thunderbird Releasing, all these distributors, especially for regional releases around Bristol and the Southwest. A highlight in this particular category was the work I did on Bait, which won a BAFTA last year.
Ooh.
Bait is a film by Mark Jenkin, who's a film director from Cornwall. It's a 16mm film, feature film, black and white, about fishermen. I don't know anything about fishing. I've never even been to Cornwall, but I knew, like, within the first 5 minutes of watching this film, that I had to work on it. I had to do this because it was so beautiful. And I got onto their team just before they went to Berlin for the world premiere there.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got acquired by the BFI, they requested that I stay on as their kind of marketing and social media person. And through the course of this, again, I worked so closely with the producers and I learned so much from them and, on their future projects as well. And they were so giving and so generous. For me, that was really the main reason I stayed on, because I loved this team so much. And so the bigger the film got, the more, again, I responded to what was going on. People are diehard fans of this film, maybe because it represented the Cornish community in a way that they hadn't really been represented before. But also just the talent around the film. Anyway, I would say in those three categories, hopefully I've highlighted I've highlighted my favorite projects I've worked on.
Yeah, and just goes to show everything you touches either wins an Oscar, wins a BAFTA. Like, it's just
Okay, that's too generous now. That's too generous. But that's very kind of you to say. I'm very
that's what I got
grateful.
from that.
I don't take it for granted, and it definitely is teamwork. It definitely is the work. It definitely is the talent that is involved. I guess what I've learned is how to hone that into a conversation with viewers and audiences. I guess they feel closer to the work, and that's what I hope to do when I was doing this kind of public relations work, is to make people feel closer to the work and to the talent behind the work. Oh, and the other thing is, any skills that you have, honestly, they are transferable, even though you think they're not. So I still use some of the key things I learned in architecture and town planning to inform the work I do now. So, for example, with Africa in Motion, we've been applying for funding in projects that technically are not film, but are related to our audiences and our target audiences. So my background in town planning has informed that and all the applications that we're doing and so on. So for your listeners, whatever skills that you have, I promise you, they can be transferable to anything else. Everything I learned in marketing is transferable to other aspects. Everything I learned in the built environment is transferable to my work now. And along the way, you're learning how to write, how to do funding applications, how to write copy, how to do press releases. There's so many things that you learn along the way. Don't take it for granted what you've learned at film school or wherever you are, because there's a future in it, is what I'm trying to say.
Definitely. And also for our listeners, do you have a social media account our followers can follow you on and see like the projects that you're doing and what's happening with Africa in Motion, and hear your words of wisdom?
I don't know about that, but yes, follow Africa in Motion on Instagram and Twitter at AIM Film Fest, and on Facebook as well. It's all the same handle, AIM Film Fest. And for me personally, you can follow me at Twitter at L Chronicle, so EL Chronicle as one word. I'm on Twitter.
So yes, everyone go follow Liz. Definitely follow Africa in Motion to stay up to date with their festival, which is hopefully going to be running again this year. And
yes,
November?
hopefully October, because November is COP26, the Global Climate Change Summit, which is billed to be like our final chance, to turn things around. So we don't want to interrupt that. So we're having our festival. So we're having our festival in October.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. We'll announce the dates as soon as we can.
Yeah. Exciting. Well, thanks so much for being on our podcast. We're almost done. We have a little quiz.
Oh no.
It's called the Impossible Quiz. It's really fun. Bianca will tell you she loves to play.
Okay.
It's only fun for Ashley because she doesn't play.
Oh my days. Okay, I'm scared now.
Okay. Question 1. Which one of these strands is not part of the No Direct Flight exhibition, which was the program producer is Liz Chege. So here are you have A through D. So A, and it's what one isn't a part of it. A, swimming in your skin again. B, time circles. C, homecoming. Or D, sonic shorts.
D. D was
I
it?
I was muted.
Oh, the tricks come out. Bianca always has new tricks she's doing. It is actually C, homecoming. Sonic
What?
was part of it.
But homecoming was a strand.
No, it sounds like it was, but it's not homecoming. It's homegoing. So
Oh, yes. Very good. That was a trick question. You got me there. Also, you have an advantage here. It's been ages since I dealt with that season. Anyway, carry on. I'll take the L. I'll take the L.
I'm gonna take the L. Liz, you gotta carry us through.
Okay, question 2. What year did My Transgender Life, directed by, I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Yonela Semitu, release?
Can we get a multiple choice?
So we got A 2016, B
No, it's later than that.
2018, C 2019, or D 2020.
I'm gonna go with C, 2019.
Yeah, that was my instinct too.
And that's correct.
Yes.
That is correct.
Go, Bianca.
No, see, collaboration. I needed the backup from Liz.
Okay, question 3. 2 more questions. So question 3, who directed Our Lady of the Nile? Also, I'm saying the English version, so my apologies. A, Scholastic Mukasanga. B, Atik Rami. C, Malachi Uwamahoro. Or D, Amanda Muga Bezakai. And I'm sorry, I'm butchering these names.
So, Bianca, I know the answer to this. It's B, Rami.
Mhm.
Yes, yeah.
That is right. Okay, so we have you guys. I guess if you're a team, if you're going to be answering as a team, you have 2 points. So 2 out of 4 so far. Let's see if you can get the third. You're like at a 50-50, I guess. So you're still failing, but
Wow.
Ouch.
This is what Ashley does.
Yeah.
I know I'm the worst because I'm a really sore loser too, and I'm a cheat. So
We love that you're self-aware. That's, Okay, give us the last. Is this the last question?
this is the last question. Ready?
Okay, for the win.
Who was denied being buried at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which is where a lot of celebrities are laid to rest?
My goodness.
It was around 1950. This person had an estimated of 300 movies that they had starred in. They received screen credit for only 80 of them. This person also won an Oscar, but was still denied.
Do we get multiple choice?
Yeah. A, Anna Mae Wong. B, Haiti McDaniel. C, Janine Bassinger. Or D, Veronica Lake.
That's a tough one because I don't actually care very much about Hollywood industry. Bianca, my instinct is Hattie actually, because she's been in so many films, but I don't remember her being denied a burial there. Do you have any idea?
Oh my gosh. No.
Can I Google?
Okay, so Liz, are we saying B? Was she B?
It sounds like, yeah, it sounds like Hattie, so B.
That's correct. Good
Yay!
job.
Yay. Oh, that's really sad to hear that they denied her.
Yeah.
Was she allowed in the end or?
as far as I know, I don't know if she actually ever was allowed to be buried back there, which is really
Yeah.
sad.
It doesn't surprise me. Just the other day in the Washington Post, a cemetery in Louisiana got into trouble because the white overseer refused to bury a black police officer in the cemetery.
Oh my gosh.
This was like last week. It was the end of January. So
thank you so much, Liz. It's been so great having you on and listening about your career in Africa in Motion and just all the films that I now have a list to go see. And yeah, best of luck to you in the future with Africa in Motion. For all of our listeners, if you haven't already followed, please follow Africa in Motion, which is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at AIM Film Festival. And also you can follow Liz on Twitter, which is L Chronicles, which is EL Chronicles. And yeah, follow us at Behind the Takes too. We are at Behind the Takes Pod. We are on Instagram and Facebook. And thank you so much and have a wonderful week.
you too. Thank you for having me.